Alright kids, how's we doing? Since it's Halloween and our Alyssa's from space and she likes all that fucking nonsense, I've written me all a story. And it's a proper story as well, with like verbs and everything that aren't bollocks. Not that I haven't used bollocks, because I've used bollocks a lot, but anyway, I'm gonna tell you the story of Dracula. It was a cold, dreary English night, and rain battered the cobbled streets in a thunderous cacophony. A cab rolled down the street with a rattle of wood on stone, illuminated by the harsh gaslights that lined the street. I had been summoned by a foreign count, Lord Wisenap, to go to his faraway castle to negotiate selling a plot of land, but I told him to go bollocks, so he had to come here instead. He greeted me with a handshake that was clammy and limp, like one might expect from a ginger man. I introduced myself in a professional, business-like manner. The man was a customer, after all. "How's we doing, lad?" I said as I pulled my hand out of his, discreetly giving it a wipe on my trouser leg. "Fancy a pint, son?" "No thank you, I'm rather tired. Might you show me to my accommodation?" he replied. Now that were really fucking odd. So much so that I was already halfway down the street towards the pub, the old dog's bollocks in, and I had to turn around and walk back to him. I stared at him in astonishment. "But it's the pub!" I exclaimed, getting my point across in as succinct and clear manner as possible. He still refused, so instead I brought him along to my house. "Alright, this is it," I told him, gesturing around the room. "How quaint," he commented. "You're sleeping on couch, mate, 'cause I ain't paying for thee a bloody hotel room, I'll tell thee now. Bloody £10 for a night at Travel Lodge, you can bollocks." With that I left him to his devices, and went to see my beautiful, beloved fiancée. "Alright darling, where's my bloody tea?" I called to her lovingly from down the stairs. I'd be buggered if she expected me to walk all the way up them just to say hello to her, I can tell thee now. "It's in the oven," she called back to us. "Don't come up, I'm trying on the dress for the wedding." "Weren't gonna bloody do anyway," I thought to myself, sitting down and eating my potatoes and gravy. "I'm off to pub," I yelled after I finished, needing a break from such intense love scenes. Bloody hard work being in a relationship it is, I'll tell you now. Sometimes they expect you to talk to them and all sorts of bollocks. After a few drinks and a good old scrap, I stumbled back home. A strange mist seemed to engulf the house, casting a green haze through the window that my Uncle Ted installed for a fiver and a curry. The stairs creaked ominously as I ascended, and once in my bed my fiancée was mumbling strange words about how she wanted to go on a low sodium diet and that plays were good, but in my drunken state I dismissed it as woman's bollocks. Upon waking, as the sun climbed into the heavens once more, and the pigeons sang as they shat on the window, I rolled over to see my fiancée's face, pale and wan. Half dazed, she spoke to me in a strange voice, almost delusional. "I think the Count's a vampire." "Aye? Well, I think you're talking shite. I need to go and finish selling the silly wanker an house. But listen, darling, you rest up, you hear me? Forget about all this vampire nonsense. All that matters is that you get better. Take as long as you want to rest. I still want my tea on table when I get home though." Wordlessly, she passed me a microwave pie that was in the fridge that was conveniently by the bed, and bid me farewell with a sadness in her eyes, as if she knew it was the last time I would truly see her. Downstairs I entered my client's room, or the living room as it's otherwise known. I didn't bother knocking because it was my bloody house. His luggage sat on the table, emblazoned with his family name, Wisenap. Something about the name struck me as off, realisation floating tantalisingly out of reach, but after 5 seconds I still hadn't figured it out, so I stopped trying and writ it off as a bad job. A note lay on the table in girl's handwriting. It had joined up letters and everything. Upon inspection I found it had been left by the Count, saying he'd gone out and would meet me by the property he was to buy. The note was signed at 9:15, and it was 9:10 now, so I hurriedly put the kettle on and sat and read the paper for half an hour. "How do, dickhead?" I greeted him in a friendly manner, since I'd gotten to know him. After showing him around the place, he told me something about his plan to open up this place called Starbucks or some shite nearby, but I didn't pay attention to him because it involved near beer or tits. After some haggling, he tried to get the price lowered. I repeatedly told him stop being a prick. We settled on a price, full price. With business sorted, we got round to talking, and after he mentioned he thought I had a lovely wife a few too many times, I punched him out. As he fell to the floor, a spray of red mist gushing from his nose, a trendy beret fell out of his pocket and landed on the floor. I stared at it in shock, my face pale as cold realisation crept up on me. Racing home to confirm my suspicions, only briefly stopping at Greg's, I ran back to the house and into his room. The name on the case made sense now. When read backwards, Count Weissnap was Count Pansy. Running to the kitchen, my heart pounding, I paled in horror at the sight before me. There was no pie on the table. Instead, there was a salad, along with some bloody daft scented candles. Storming upstairs with a right bonk on, I booted in the door to my room. My fiance's face was curled in a savage, bestial sneer, eyes shining yellow. She opened her mouth and long, deadly white needles gleamed at me, screaming of impending danger. It was then that it truly dawned on me. The signs unmistakable. My fiancée, my darling, beloved fiancée, had been turned into a southerner. My natural northern instincts flared, and as she jumped towards me, fangs gleaming, I nutted her in the bonds. Grimly, I built a coal pyre around her as she laid unconscious on the floor and set it aflame. There was no saving her now. With a heavy heart and a sadness in my soul, I set out for revenge to bring justice to the foul beast. Only after the fire went out, though. No use wasting a good coal fire, eh? I was sad in a manly way, by the way. I didn't cry or out. I'm not a bloody ponce. And I had a bit on the side who works in Greg's anyway, and she made better pasties. So, I set out on my journey to the Count's lair. As I crossed the border in a taxi, hordes of southern lost souls bustled and hustled, pushed and shoved along the streets, lifelessly rushing to their destination without stopping to heckle anyone or buy pastries. Packs of vacant southerners sat huddled around laptops in coffee shops, pretending they were trendy writers when actually they were looking at cat memes. Once I arrived, cold mist swept around me, casting the chill of death on the air, and pale moonlight illuminated the towers of his wicked castle, Buckingham Palace. I let out a mighty bellow to summon the beast to his demise. "Get out here so I can knock 7 bells out of thee, you great tart!" My thunderous words shook the night sky, casting terror into the monster's heart, and also startled a nearby pigeon. The fiendish Count, though, played dirty. Unable to face me by himself, he unleashed a vicious pack of savage wolves, who snapped and slobbered angrily after a blood-curdling howl. There were like 12 of them. Actually, 12's a bit shit. There were, say, 50 of them. They attacked angrily. Actually, right, I would have been okay with 50 normal wolves, obviously, but these ones were like 20 foot tall and they had laser eyes, and actually there were 500 of them. So yeah, right. Anyway, he was well outnumbered, so you can't blame him for having trouble, and also, right, there were a bear with a gun and a dog with an umbrella. So, I fought fiercely, keeping the wolves at bay like a titan, crashing and stomping, but eventually they wore me down, and I found myself getting more sluggish. They started to get at me, slashing and biting, and I did get shot by the bear because they can't see very well and also don't have opposable thumbs, but it made a fucking loud noise once. If it had been a good day, I'd have been sound, but I'd had to fucking walk there. Well, I got a taxi down, but I had like a 5-minute walk after I arrived, so obviously I were a bit out of breath, and I hadn't had a sit down for a while. The wolves managed to pin me down, and the dog decided to have a kip on my lap, so even though I struggled, I could not break free. The Lord of Darkness, the South, and all that's unholy loomed over me, the moonlight casting a red shadow over his face from his ironic beret. The look on his face, the gleam in his eyes, speaks of an unspeakable, unimaginable cruelty, which could have only come from years on a salad-only diet. Coolly, he takes a sip of his glacier spring water that he paid £5 for, even though it's probably just tap water, and he speaks with a sneer on his face. Join me and you can have hummus and quiche, and we'll invest in our train systems down south, even though it's already 60 times better than the rest of the country, and we'll build a second wheel in London and call them the Millennium Eyes. Madness gleams on his face as he speaks, and he puts on some glasses that are 5 times larger than his head, but are apparently fashionable anyway. I could feel my strength fading, and as my vision dimmed and the dog snored on my lap, I could feel millionaires not having to pay tax starting to make sense, and I suddenly wanted to buy a new car, even though the one I have works perfectly fine, just because I've got a promotion at work, and then everything faded. All there was darkness. Darkness, and something warm in the back of my pocket. My microwave pie. As gravy seeped its way through my back pocket, I felt myself rousing, strength flooding into me like an ocean of Bisto as the pie invigorated me. I pried myself free of the wolf's paws, and booting the dog, I ripped the pie from my pocket and brandished it at the Southern King. "Have a fucking pie!" I roared, and the monster recoiled in horror. Pulling out my pickaxe from my pocket, yeah, you heard right, it were always there. I raised it to the sky like a mighty pillar. "Coal mining's an immoral, unsustainable fuel source," he cried in anguish. A witty retort flashed into my mind like a pint down Dave's throat. "Your mum's an unsustainable fuel source," I shouted triumphantly, driving the pick into his cold lettuce of a heart. With a wail of hipster anguish, he crumbled into dust, mourning with his last breath how cliché his death was, and all that was left was ash. And that, children, is the end. Oh, and some of you smarter ones out there might be thinking that the pie in the back of his pocket was the one his wife gave him, and this story's an allegory for love triumphing over evil. It's not. I ate that one. That one from Greg's. Greg saved the day, not love. Don't be a ponce. And with that, children, have a good All Hallows Eve.